Hey guys, so we're in Emma Hyndman's new gym, Strength Pro Gym at Laserdyke in Bradford, and I'm with a good friend of ours, Neil Curry. So Neil and I have been working together for about, how many weeks is it now? Just before prep, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we started working together at the beginning of midway through my off season, which is probably about 3 or 4 months now.
Yeah, and Neil came to us originally, you had a shoulder problem and some tendonitis in your knees, didn't you?
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that we've changed with Neil's programming, obviously Neil's coached by Kuba, who takes care of all his nutrition and his training stuff, but Neil, like a lot of bodybuilders, struggle with his mobility issues. You know, a lot of his injuries and a lot of his issues are around the fact that his hips were stiff, his knees were having to compensate, his ankles were pretty stiff, and again, that knee tends to be the final compensation point. Shoulder-wise, you know, all the pressing you were doing, and again, I think these are common areas that bodybuilders, powerlifters, strongmen tend to get problems with. So over the past few weeks, the first thing we did was implemented some mobility work for Neil. We'll talk a little bit about the difference between mobility and flexibility, because there is a difference. And so we implemented that. Neil's currently coming in for a weekly treatment. So what we tend to do in his weekly treatment, the hands-on stuff, he's just worked through his problem areas on that particular day. So if he's trained push the day before, it might be shoulders and upper back. If he's done legs, it might be hamstring and quads. So yeah, I think in comparison to other preps now, I think this one has probably been one of your smoothest, hasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I've previously, I've always had little niggles, which have led to more of an injury before I came to join MoFo. I just think since joining MoFo and kind of taking professional help within my rehab, not only have I become more mobile, like you said, more efficient, and being injury free has led me to be able to perform better than I've ever performed during this prep.
Which is unusual, isn't it, from a prep perspective, because normally you find your performance starts to deteriorate a little bit as you...
Yeah, so I've found that throughout this prep, I've got stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's no coincidence that throughout this same prep, I've been focusing more on recovery, more on rehab, and looking after my body a lot more. And what I've really found is as I've become more mobile and more efficient, it's become a lot easier to lift. And when it's easier to lift, the bigger weights feel lighter. Yeah, as opposed to when you're stiff and immobile, the little weights feel like big weights. You know, when you're efficient in movement, the big weights feel like little weights. So that's kind of the main thing for me as a bodybuilder. What I'm interested in is putting on muscle and getting lean. Now that's the reason we do everything, right? It's the reason we diet, it's the reason we recover, it's the reason we do all this stuff. Now, focusing on your recovery, focusing on your rehab, focusing on movement, only will help you put on muscle a lot quicker, because every time you go into the gym, you need to be performing at 100%. Whereas I think, and that's the key difference in this prep, since working together, I now go into the gym consistently and perform at 100%. Whereas in previous preps, I had niggles, which some days I'd be performing at 80%, 70%, 100%, 60%. And there was an inconsistency of that. Whereas now, I'm consistent. My lifestyle's better, my rest's better, my sleep's better. It's more fun.
I think the thing is, you've always trained like a pro, and you've always ate like a pro, but you've never addressed your recovery and your ability to work like a pro.
No.
So what we're doing now is we're now trying to put that full package together. So alongside Kuba, myself, we've got every angle covered. So his training, his nutrition covered, his mobility is working now. And I think the thing that struck me, I think I watched this on one of your Instagram stories. He was talking about getting up to 5 plates a side on the squat. And there was a comment that he made where he said 5 plates felt like 1 plate because you're moving more efficiently, or 3 plates because you're moving more efficiently. And I think that's the real term benefit of the mobility work, is the fact that you start to move those big weights, but they feel easier because you're moving more efficiently.
Put it into perspective, if you've got a Olympic bar on your back with 3 plates a side, and you're stiff as a board, and you're immobile, and your back hurts, and your knees are hurting, that 3 plates is going to feel like 5. Whereas if you've got 5 plates on there and you're efficient, mobile, injury free, and you have the ability to use all your joints efficiently to be able to move your body, then 5 plates will feel like 3. And that's kind of what's happened to me on all my exercises across the board. I've got stronger and they feel lighter than the lighter weights that I used to use because I'm mobile.
So today, Neil's doing a leg session, and I thought what we'd do is we'd take you through a sample of the sort of stuff that Neil's been doing for the last few weeks. So this is the ideal sort of scenario with your mobility work, which is what we've introduced with Neil, is to do it as part of your warm-up routine. So typically, your warm-up would probably consist of going into the gym. Did you do any cardio before you started? Would you
No.
right before you did?
Not really, no.
So you get under your bar, you probably start empty bar, 20s either side, a couple of reps, 2 20s either side, a couple more reps. And I think that's the typical way that most people tend to warm up.
Yeah.
Whereas now, we're increasing core body temperature, we're doing a little bit of cardio to get the sort of heart rate up and get some blood flow to the muscles. And then Neil's spending probably 10 or 15 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think when we started, it would take me 20 minutes to get everything moving. Now, probably 10.
Yeah.
10 to 15.
Yeah. Because it's like training, you know, it accumulates. So you tend to find those early stages where you're trying to sort of work through that stiffness.
Yeah.
You spend more time doing what you're doing. As you get more efficient at your mobility work, in the same way as you get more efficient at lifting, you find that your mobility becomes more efficient. When you streamline that, you find the bits that you need that work and the bits that don't work, you disregard the bits that don't work. Now, as far as Neil's leg session is concerned, what we started to do with Neil, we've moved away from the sort of generic approach, which is what we started off, and just addressing everything that was stiff in his lower body and his lower back. And we're now doing more of a directed mobility approach. So, what's your first heavy compound today?
Leg press.
Leg press. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you, we're going to take you through how we'd approach Neil's warm-up after he's done his cardio. So he's going to do 5-10 minutes on the treadmill, a bit of walking, get his heart rate up, get the blood flow, and we're going to move over to the leg press, and we're going to take you through a sample of the sort of stuff that Neil will do before he trains. So we're on Neil's first compound exercise on his lower day. Now Neil has 3 different sessions. So basically he's on a push-pull leg split at the moment. And what we've done is try to make sure that before he does push, pull or lower legs, we're basically mobilising and opening up the areas that he's going to need to accommodate the movements as far as that particular workout is concerned. Now I think, like we touched on in the first part of the video, commonly what most people tend to do is they jump onto their first exercise, stick a bit of weight on there, do a few reps, pre-exhaust, a bit more weight, a few more reps until they get to the working weights. Now, you know, I think from a Kuba, JP perspective, you know, they're very keen that you don't waste energy in those warm-up sets.
Yeah.
So typically the reps in those are kind of like in the 6 to sort of 3 down to 1 or like that. And I think what you're trying to do there is just accommodate the weights. But what you also need to consider is the fact that you need the joints mobile enough to be able to get into position, because if you haven't got that mobility, that's when you start to get into difficulties. Now on the leg press, for example, what you'll find people usually find when they're bringing the weight down into the chest, because their hips are stiff, their pelvis starts to posterior rotate, so they start to get a bit of a butt wink. Now, that in itself isn't a bad thing, but that in itself, when it's loaded, that's how you start to develop back injuries. So it's the change in back position when you're under load that tends to cause the back problems you get with leg pressing, squatting, and sort of those lower body movements. So the difference between, I think it's probably worth just talking about the difference between mobility and flexibility. Now, mobility is about moving the joints, and if you get your joints mobile, you tend to find that your muscles elongate to accommodate that increased range of movement in the joints, so it's much longer lasting. Whereas flexibility, which is what you see a lot of people doing pre-exercise as well as post-exercise, this is about calming the nervous system, and this is about relaxing the nervous system. So it's a quick fix, but it's temporary, it doesn't last. So mobility work, which is what we're getting Neil to do, is all about moving the joints. Flexibility work, which is basically stretching the muscles, that's where you're going to get that quick fix, but it's not going to be long lasting. So I'm going to get you onto the leg press, dude. So into a normal position. And what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 reps Neil's already warmed up at this point, so he's done a little bit of cardio just to get his core body temperature up. And we're going to do a couple of reps. And after those couple of reps, we're going to find out where he felt stiff and tight. Okay, just roll your weights there. There we are. So, what did you feel from that?
First exercise, I've obviously not done mobility yet. I feel tight here.
Yeah.
And in my hips.
Okay, perfect.
Knees feel okay, literally just ankle hip.
Ankle hip, brilliant. Right, so we're going to come over to the lifting platform, and what we're going to get Neil to do is we're going to do ankle mobility exercise. So trying to keep the knee over the toe. Now with this one, Neil would normally band this. So we normally have the red resistance band right down the bottom of his ankle, and that resistance band would be pulling his ankle posteriorly backwards. In this situation, we're just using body weight. So good alignment through the body, making sure that we think about the spinal position, keeping the spine organised, making sure the knee guard stays over the toes, so we're not allowing that knee to drift out. And we'll spend about 30 to 60 seconds in this position until Neil starts to feel a loosening sensation in the front of the ankle. Once he's done the right side, we'll then move over to the left side and do exactly the same thing. So, as you can see, this is dynamic mobility work. We're not holding static positions, we're not holding stretches, because there's tons and tons of evidence that suggests that actually reduces strength and reduces your ability to be able to produce power. So, do you want to swap over to the side? So what are you feeling when you're doing that?
When I start, it feels really stiff.
Yeah.
As I go,
and obviously from a leg press perspective, it's pretty important. And this could be the same if you're squatting, if you're doing any sort of lower body based exercise. The key areas of restriction are usually the ankles and hips. Alright dude, so do you want to jump back onto the leg press? Now at this point we've probably had a little bit more weight. It's almost using it like our split warm up set. So into position. So we're now thinking about the ankles. So you can see range of movement starts to increase. Just from simply opening the ankles up a little bit. Do one more rep. Elevate back off from there. So ankles.
hip.
To the hip now. Okay. So we've now immobilised his ankles. Literally this could take, like you say, it's 10 minutes.
Yeah,
when we first started, Neil was doing probably 20 minutes. He was probably spending as much time mobilising because you're that stiff as he was training. Whereas now, it's literally 10 minutes, identify your restricted areas, mobilise those things, and then start your warm-up sets from there, start your specific warm-up sets from there. Right, if you lie down onto your back first, Neil, we'll do the one where we normally band it into the hip. So ordinarily again, we'd have a band around the front of the hip, pulling the hip in that direction. And Neil's going to take his hands on the front of the leg and basically go from the shoulder, the outside of the shoulder, to the other shoulder. So we're trying to think about moving three planes of movements. Now from a leg press perspective, you're quite a deep leg presser.
Yeah.
So the most important areas of restriction from Neil's perspective are as the leg is coming out towards the outside of the same shoulder. That's where it needs to spend a bit of time. Perfect. So it's less important. You obviously need to make sure from a power perspective you've still got as much internal rotation as you have external. But from his perspective, because we're moving on to the leg press.
So I want to be able to bring that plate as near to my chest as I can,
Yeah.
which is replicating that movement there.
Now if you're working with a training partner, you could partner assist this, so we could actually work into a position where it becomes a little bit easier for Neil and a little bit more effective, because we can now start to apply an external force there. So this is where your training partner comes in useful. You obviously have to reciprocate with this though, so once you've done this, you do the same for your training partner. So again, 30 to 60 seconds on the left leg, 30 to 60 seconds on the right leg, and that would be piece number 2 as far as Neil's concerned. Now in the past, previous sessions when we started working together, we've obviously done more work from there. We did some stuff for your knees, This is all based on the fact that Neil has now spent the best part of probably 3 months improving his mobility. And this has been, every time he trains, he's got into the gym, he spent either 20 minutes in the early stages, 10 minutes now, he's condensed it down to the point where he knows what works. And this is the first part of his session. So you come into the gym, you have your pre-workouts. Do you have pre-workouts?
Yeah.
You've got 10 minutes then for your pre-workout to kick in.
This is what I do.
To get your head in the game, because obviously if you come straight from work, or you've driven down to the gym, you've had that stressful drive we just had across Bradford, you need a bit of time to get your head in the game, and this is the time that you're going to use that time to kind of get your head in the right place. So back onto your leg press. Again, we'll add a little bit more weight at this point. So we're now up to probably 3 plates a side. Probably close to the max, aren't we? That was a joke. So again, you can see now, we've literally done nothing but mobilise his ankle, mobilise his hips, and look at the range of movement there. And
Not only the range, it just feels nice.
Yeah.
It feels easy to get in there. So now with 10 plates on each side, it will be more comfortable getting out of that position and getting into it, which is the key.
Do you want to wrap your weight blocks off there? So, essentially what we've gone through this morning is a little bit of mobility work for Neil's lower session. He's got a similar program for his push and his pull sessions. And I would say, in comparison to previous seasons, when you've prepped for competitions, I think this has been one of the smoothest preps you've had.
100%.
We're in a situation now where Neil came to us 3 months ago with a shoulder and knee injury. He's injury free now, touch wood. Yeah. And I think a lot of that's down to the fact that you now emphasise in recovery, his post-workout nutrition, his ice baths.
Yeah, to be fair, I think it's quite modest. Like when I came to Mofo, I couldn't leg press and I couldn't quad extension because of the pain. So I had patellar tendonitis in my left knee, it's just got progressively worse from not doing this stuff for years. And since you fixed it, which was quite a long road, wasn't it? It took us a little while.
It took us a few weeks.
Took us a few weeks, maybe a month. But what we didn't do was have time off the gym. We rebuilt it and got stronger and stronger, didn't we? So I kept being able to train whilst in rehab.
Yeah.
And what we've done is fixed it, and I'm now stronger than I've ever been. And this has played such a huge part in that, because I can safely move the weights now.
Yeah.
I'm not forcing my body in positions. My body is going into the position it needs to go in and getting out of it efficiently.
Yeah.
And honestly, 10 minutes, 15 minutes pre-workout, it's changed my game.
And I think that's the difference. I think from my perspective, having spent 30 years lifting weights, I know I might not look like that, but I was an endurance athlete before, so it was all about power to weight ratio. But I've literally spent the best part of 30 years in gyms lifting. And I think the worst thing you can do for most injuries is take time off, especially for tendon injuries. And this is the common misconception. You go and see your physio or your chiropractor, and it's like, right, you've got to stop training legs. Yeah. And actually all that does is actually makes your tendon softer and makes your knee pain worse. So with some careful programming, some modifications of your program, we carried on training through his knee problems. And like you say, we've now transitioned back into a normal leg session. And he's flying.
Yeah, and I think it's a common thing in bodybuilding. Like, if you actually sit back and look at it, you realise kind of how maybe silly we are at times. Like, if you look at footballers, what do they do before they go on a football pitch? They train the movements they're going to do on the pitch.
Absolutely.
If you watch a tennis player warm up, they train the movements they're going to do.
Yeah.
Side lunges, they do swinging.
Yeah.
I wonder what a golf player does to warm up. Probably swings a golf club.
Yeah.
But bodybuilders, we just seem...
Do you think it's because mobility seem a bit like airy-fairy?
Maybe.
It's not. I mean, it's hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, it might be seen. It's a misconception if it is seen as being airy-fairy, but you don't look airy-fairy when you're hitting PBs every week.
Yeah, absolutely.
At all.
Yeah.
I just think it's a massive thing within the fitness industry that is overlooked. Preparing yourself for the session that's about to happen is a massive thing in any sport. One
of the things that we tried to do with the Instagram accounts is stress the importance of mobility. You know, a lot of the stuff that you see on there, that free stuff that we give away, it's all about trying to encourage people to prepare for that movement.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's a game changer. You know, 60% of what I see in clinic is the accumulation, years and years of tightness developing because you don't stretch, you don't mobilise, you don't look after yourself in terms of your recovery. And that niggle that you had 2 years ago now becomes a full-blown injury. Yeah. And I think that's where you've got to at the point where we picked you up.
It's so easy to see, like, if you've got a joint that doesn't work how it's meant to and you put 500 kilo through it,
yeah,
what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
Your body's going to scream, and it's going to hurt,
yeah,
eventually.
Yeah.
You know, whereas if you put 500 kilo on a leg press through a set of joints that are ready for that movement and are able to perform for that movement, you're much less likely to get any sort of injury, you know.
So guys, that was an example of Neil's lower session. We plan on doing a similar thing for push and for pull in future videos. And then you're going to put me through a session, aren't you?
Yeah.
Payback time. All right, thanks for tuning in. And from Neil and I,
yep,
catch you soon.